We want to go through, get started today by giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And I'm putting two questions in the chat. You can answer both or either. Tell us what you would like to get out of the session on facilitation. And if you have a very specific question about facilitation, go ahead and share that. Also, feel free to put questions in the chat throughout the presentation. My job today will be monitoring the chat. So tell us who you are and give us your question or what you'd like to get out of the session. I'll have the facilitators for today to introduce themselves as well. I'll start with Zena.
Oh, hi, I'm Zena Zumeta, and I've been a mediator for way too long and have done facilitation in my days, a lot in my labor negotiation days and facilitating labor negotiations, which is how I met Bob Galardi all those decades ago, and do facilitate a lot of organizational meetings as well. I just want to say I'm delighted that those of you who didn't come to the last one did come to this one. And my view of things is that you can start at either end and you'll end up in the middle. So we will be going over some of the comparisons. And Craig also put into the chat the link to the recording for the last one. So if anybody wants to actually look at the last one, that's great. And anybody who wants to just have another discussion of the differences, I'm always up for that. So I'm delighted to be here. And it's great to see all of you and so many people that I know.
Thank you. Bob?
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Galardi. I haven't been doing a whole lot of mediation lately because I mainly do facilitation, and it's generally of labor negotiations. However, I certainly have mediated or facilitated other management meetings and things like that. I went with Zena years and years ago out to Maine to take the Great Meetings course. It was great as it advertised, and I'm really happy to be here to help share that with you, and hopefully you'll feel more confident or have some idea of where we're headed with that. Please put any questions you have in the chat so that we can record them and make sure we answer them at some point. And thanks to all of you for attending.
So I am excited that everyone is here as well, especially I echo that if you didn't come last month and you showed up today for part 2, I don't think you're too far away from us. For both last month and this month, there were attachments in the announcement, so you actually have what we talked about last month, that comparison between facilitation and mediation. It's a great article. I think it lays down that mediation versus facilitation very well. Some things are very similar, and then there are other areas of the mediation process that differ greatly from the facilitation process. So I encourage you to take a look at that when you get a chance. Review the video. All of our Lunch and Learn videos are on our YouTube channel. So you can go to last month. This month will be on that channel as well. So in your downtime, if you want to listen to the video, go ahead and do that. We also introduced a video last month that we will do again this month. So for those who are attending for the first time, today you'll get a chance to see the video for the first time, and Zena will use that video to kind of lay out some of those specific skills and nuances that makes a good meeting great. So that's what you can expect today. And I encourage you, again, as Bob has, to put your questions in the chat or comments in the chat. I'm going to be capturing that information, and we want to make sure that we address as many questions as we can. The third thing I want to say is that last month and this month is really a precursor to a day of learning about great meetings. I can say more about this at the end of our day today, this Lunch and Learn. But the DRC is getting some requests for large group facilitations, and that is why we put this Lunch and Learn together, and we're looking at doing a full day training in the fall. that Zena and Bob and I will work, co-facilitate together. So I hope this topic is interesting enough that you will consider attending that. And I think that's all that, oh, and the last thing I do want to say again, so that I won't miss it as we wrap up, I want to thank Zena and Bob just for being responsive to me and asking that they help me coordinate and orchestrate this. Bob, Zena, and Leslie actually did a full day training. Maybe it was a 2-day training years ago, as Muffy mentioned. I want to say close to 10 years ago. I think it was in 2014. It's been a long time. They did a 2-day training with us over at the Washtenaw Intermediate School District building. It was one of the best workshop trainings that I have experienced in my career. Just not only talking about these things in terms of concepts, but really giving us real skills to build upon so that we can use when we're in the moment dealing with a large group. So I'm excited that we'll get a chance to do that again at some point this year. So I want to just thank them, from the bottom of my heart for planting that seed and for being responsive in a very busy environment, being responsible. And both Zena and Bob have been long-term supporters. Bob did not say this, but he's been on the board of the DRC 2 or 3 times over its life. Back in the 90s, I've seen the records. He's been around the DRC for a long time. Zena was one of the founding members of what is now our DRC. So they're truly pioneers at our center, and I am grateful for their ongoing support. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Zena to get us started.
Except I just have to say how amazing Belinda is and how wonderful it is to do anything with her. So I am just honored and privileged to be doing this, Belinda, with you. Thank you.
Ditto.
So what I thought I would do, what we decided that I should do, is go over the video and do a stop and start. And what that will allow us to do is, for those of you who have seen it, to really kind of analyze it. For those of you who haven't, kind of get a sense of it. And we'll be looking at what are the skills, but there's no reason that we can't also at the same time look at how does that differ from mediation. So I would be very open to your comments, either hand raise or in the chat, to where should we stop, where should we talk about things. This is a very old video. I said this last time, and the reason that I use it is because it is just so much fun. There's a lot of sense of humor in it, and the skills are the skills in the process are laid out really, really well. So an oldie but a goodie. So let me start it. I have to click the things at the bottom. Share sound, optimize. Oh, it doesn't want to do that yet. How weird. Okay. So are you all seeing the video? Okay, and let me make it bigger, and let me know if the sound is okay.
Okay, hello everybody. How you doing today? Thanks for coming. Don't worry, we will get through it. We will get through it, and I see we do have a quorum. So the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Association of Condominium Owners of Nirvana Gardens will come to order. Thanks. Anyway, at this point, I would like to depart from the Roberts Rules of Order and introduce our facilitator, Ed.
Hi. I'd like to talk a little bit about this evening's meeting. Now, I'm sure that you've noticed, for one thing, that your table is missing. Oh, hello. That's because we're going to be trying a little different kind of a meeting tonight to address the problem that you've been having with your third assessment. In this meeting, we're going to be using a process that I learned about at the university. And I'll be your facilitator, and it's my job to separate process from content in your meeting. Now, Mary will be writing down everything you say, and she'll be using these!
So as you can see, it's starting out with him doing everything wrong, but just the beginnings is when he's talking about separating process from content. That's what we do as mediators, right? And we write things on the flip chart. And as indicated, not everything everybody says.
This person needs help. He's learned the importance of a content focus and process focus in meetings. But he forgot a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. He still needs to learn a little bit more. First of all, there's no one right way to facilitate a meeting. To facilitate means to make easy. And since the role of the facilitator is based on flexibility and accommodation to the needs of the group, it is impossible to give you a guide like Robert's Rules of Order. You, as the facilitator, will choose process techniques that will help the group work on the content of their meeting. But first, you must make very sure that everyone in the group understands clearly what your role is. Let's go back a little bit in time.
And it's my job to separate process from content in your meeting. Now, Mary will be writing down everything you say.
Ed!
Who? What? What? Who?
Do you think everyone in the group knows what process and content are?
Well,
How do you think they feel about you writing down everything they say? Okay, just do what I tell you. First, turn around and give them a better idea of what the facilitator's role is.
Can they hear you?
I don't think so.
Great. But before we go any further, I think I should explain a few things about what Mary and I are here for. Well, as your president mentioned, my name is Ed, and I'm what's called a meeting facilitator. Now, basically, that means that I will make suggestions involving process, or how we talk about solving your problems. Now, this is your meeting, so you're going to provide the content, or the actual solutions to the problems themselves. Now, I won't contribute ideas of my own. I won't evaluate the ones that you have. It's my job to stay neutral, and that's where I need your help. If you find that I'm getting out of line in any way, being manipulative, not fully understanding what you're saying, please let me know.
So I just want to mention that the term neutrality in facilitation isn't the same as the term neutrality in mediation, because in mediation we generally have sides and parties, whereas in facilitation often there may be sides, and I have to say that as a mediator I often do get called into meetings where there are sides because they like that aspect of conflict resolution as well, but many meetings really don't. It's just the group trying to work itself out. There may be particular problem people, but you're not neutral in the sense of not taking sides. It's more neutral in the sense of you're not, you don't have a stake in the outcome. Is really, I think, more the sense of neutrality. Bob, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would absolutely. I mean, I guess one of the things is when he says, I'm going to be neutral, even as a facilitator, you shouldn't be seen as not distributing things evenly and fairly and things like that. But neutrality in this situation is more about, you know, even-handedly running the meeting, I think, more than
yeah, I think even-handed is nice.
Neutrality.
Yeah, good. Belinda, anything to add to that? Okay.
Together, we can make this a very productive meeting and really address the problem that you're having with your third assessment. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce Mary, your recorder, and she'll tell you what that means.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Hi, everybody. I'm Mary. I'm going to be...
How was that?
Great. Now, after Mary's done, make sure everyone understands their role in this meeting, too.
Oh, this is a lot of work. Can't we just let them figure it out for themselves?
Ed, get out there and facilitate.
All right, but while I'm out there sweating, why don't you explain all these roles to the people out there glued to the tube?
That sounds fair enough. I think one good way for you to begin understanding the role of the facilitator in meetings is to imagine the facilitator as a conductor of a symphony orchestra. The facilitator doesn't write the music or play the instruments. The facilitator is in charge of making sure the group gets to the end of the piece, the solution, with as much harmony as possible. In this emotional symphony, each group member has been assigned an emotion or a content to convey. If they all performed at once, without a process focus, it would sound like this. But under the direction of an experienced facilitator, that final note is a good representation of synergy, when the group's energy is greater than the sum of individual members. No one person could have made that sound. And another thing, that particular sound can never be replicated. Once it's happened, it's gone. That's where the role of the group memory and the recorder come in.
All right, but before we get started, I'd like to introduce Mary, your recorder, and she'll tell you what that means.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Hi, everybody. My name's Mary. I'm going to be your recorder, and I'll need your help because it's my job to make a record of this meeting called the group memory. Now, I can't write down everything you say, so I'll try for key ideas in your words. So keep me honest. Don't let me paraphrase. Don't let me interpret. It's your meeting. It's your...
No, that's not what I said. You weren't listening. What I said
I
was...
heard what you said. That's my job. Now, this is what it meant to me. What?
Are you really listening to what the group's saying?
Listening? I'm great at listening.
Oh, good. Well then, just remember whose meeting it is.
Oh, yeah. Theirs?
That's right.
You know, meetings would be so much better without...
Participants?
Right.
That's us!
The most important thing for anyone to remember, facilitator, recorder, and participant, is this. It's the participants' meeting. They have to keep the facilitator in line.
I don't care what you say! I've got a great idea of my own!
They also have to make sure the recorder is accurate.
Excuse me.
Yes, Kay.
It's condo. No M.
Wait. Oh, okay. I hear you. Thanks. Is that better?
And most of all, participants have to focus on content and let the facilitator guide them through process. Of course, really focusing on content means listening to other group members with an open mind.
While she's bringing that up, is there anything that's jumping out at people?
Just that's a hilarious video.
Yeah, right.
Everybody gets the point across, but it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I know, that's why I like it so much. Sorry about skipping that. I don't know how that happened. Any comments before I start it again? Or questions?
I just wondered about the significance of removing the table.
Oh, yeah. It allows for better conversation often, and it allows people to be a little bit more vulnerable if there's no table. So a lot of times, if people want deeper discussions, that's what they do. And in restorative circles, there are usually no table. Is that for the same reason?
I recognize my condo association meeting.
That's great.
I'm on a condo association myself. Another nice thing is they were in sort of a bit of a semicircle, so that,
right,
again, the vulnerability of really being able to sort of see each other and be present to each other adds to the conversation, hopefully.
Belinda, you were going to add something?
I was just going to agree with you that in the restorative circles, we practice no tables for that very reason, the vulnerability. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And we have a question in the chat. Is note-taking encouraged as a memory help?
Mean by the participants? Is that the question?
That was Kathy's question. Kathy, do you mean yes, by the participants?
I think participants always take notes for themselves, but the recorder is there really for the official notes. And yeah, we had talked a little bit about the role of the recorder. We will do that more as well. But I just want to say again that the focus here is that the facilitator is in charge of process. The parties are in charge of content, but there is one difference, which is that often in mediation, we have our process, and our process is our process, whereas in facilitation, the group needs to agree to our process. So we create a process in cooperation with the group. We don't come in with a process that we just hand them. It's a process that they and an agenda that they help create with the help of the facilitator. Where the facilitator is in charge of process is in understanding how to take notes, what it is you're supposed to be taking notes on, recording, also understanding how to make the meeting feel even-handed. As Bob was saying earlier, that the participants need to feel that it is even-handed. We, as facilitators, know how to do that. Also, in terms of getting participation from a group, we have a lot of different options for processes for group participation that we can offer to the group. But the group really helps design the process that we're using, even though we know a lot of techniques, I guess is the better word, for making sure that the meeting works.
One of the things that I try to say when we're using a recorder is take notes if it makes you more comfortable, if it really helps you, but we really want as much as possible for you to focus on our discussion. Think about what we're saying here deeply, and that's why we have a recorder to capture the important facts and things along the way.
Right.
We also have a question in the chat regarding the size of the group. The question is, what happens when the group of participants is large of the facilitation occurs? And the facilitation occurs in an auditorium, so there is no opportunity to structure the seating arrangements. So a large group in a large space and no opportunity for seating arrangements. What happens there?
So generally, a lot of the work that happens in a large group is in smaller groups. And so in addition to the auditorium, there should be rooms that people can go to. And each of those rooms would have a smaller group facilitator, and then they would come back into the auditorium and report out. So it's really simultaneous processes of large group and small groups. You could kind of say it's kind of like joint sessions and caucuses, although the purpose is very different. But a lot of the work of a large group really happens in small groups.
But I would say that in a large group, you have to structure the process so that people can feel as if they have an opportunity, especially if it's going to be an information sharing meeting, that's good, but a lot of information sharing meetings ask for commentary afterwards. And this is where making sure you've got a process, that you've worked with the group who's doing the meeting to set up a process that you've explained to people, and hopefully you can keep them on that process in the large group.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that what is the purpose of the meeting? If it's just to give information, then there doesn't need to be that much reaction. And often one of the reasons that we do a lot of pre-meeting work is to ask, what is the purpose of this meeting? And if they say it's just to give information, do they want any feedback at all? And if so, how? And that's where our expertise comes in terms of suggesting possible ways that they could get feedback, even in a large group. So it could be electronic, could be through polling, it could be responses to a survey afterwards. But that's the kind of thing that as facilitators we need to keep in mind, is what is their purpose and how can we help them make their meeting more effective? That's really what facilitators do. Can you give an example of how the group sets up the process? So before I go into a meeting like the one that you're seeing, I would have met with some portion of the group that would be helping to design the meeting. And it might be the officers, for example, in this one, or if there are factions, I would want people from all the factions in the design group. And so we would sit and talk about what is the purpose of the meeting, and how long is the meeting, and is it only one meeting or will it be a series of meetings? I mean, just all of those things. And then talk about what options there are for effectively getting the outcome that they need. So in this particular case, the outcome is what to do with an assessment for the condo. In other meetings, it could be just how to set the agenda for the year. It could be what are the vision and the goals of the organization. I mean, there's so many different purposes to meetings, and so that's why Donna Ching, who is the person who's narrating, said that there's no one way to do it, because there's so many different types of meetings that we might be helping with. Does that answer the question, Novia?
So yeah, so I just wanted to know how you get them to design that, because to me it seems like that would take a lot of time. Like if you are starting your meeting by getting their input and how the process works, that you're
so you don't yeah, so that's way before this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so rule number one is the facilitator never shows up to a meeting without having done considerable work ahead of time. Yeah. Bob, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all right. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that you're trying to understand, or you must, I think, understand really what they want to accomplish through the meeting, because that is going to help you to help them identify probably, the best process. You'll know there are going to be 40 people at the meeting, and really we just want to share financial information. And then you can take it from there to help them structure and develop an agenda that will lead them to that, and a process. But understanding what the task is and why they're having the meeting is really important, because sometimes people think, well, we meet because we always meet.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and the other question is this a one-time meeting, for a particular purpose? Is this helping an ongoing group to become more effective? Is it helping an ongoing group understand how to run a meeting? I do a lot of those. So, I mean, any of those, you have to meet with them long before to just get a sense of what is it that they're doing, what are the problems, what are the issues, how big is the group, how many facilitators do you need to bring with you? Do you need a recorder? Can you do it yourself? I mean, are you going to be running the meeting, or is the president going to be running and you're helping? I mean, just all of these things need to be worked out ahead of time. You can't just walk into a meeting and facilitate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let me try again, and I really apologize.
And most of all, participants have to focus on content and let the facilitator guide them through process. Of course, really focusing on content means listening to other group members with an open mind. Otherwise, when participants don't respect each other and all try to solve the problem at once, it can be a disaster. So let's go back one more time and see how it works when everyone plays their roles properly.
Well, when I talked with your president about tonight's agenda, we discussed the purpose of the meeting as well as what we call potential desired outcomes. Now, that's the result.
Well, the purpose is obvious. We're here to make sure that we can get that damn driveway fixed.
Wait a minute! How can you talk about the driveway when the grounds around this condo look like we're cultivating a weed garden?
I can see that people came to this meeting with different expectations about what we're here to accomplish.
Yeah, I'd say.
So let's just go around the room quickly and share our expectations for this meeting.
Let's talk a minute about expectations. We all know that the expectations we take into any meeting have a very strong influence on our perception of success at the end of the meeting. As a result, it is important to acknowledge and legitimize where people are coming from and help them to define a common purpose or content focus. This will assist them in developing more realistic expectations and make success more likely.
So this is one of the techniques that facilitators use, is to start out getting the expectations of the parties for the meeting. And you'll see the recorder recording those.
Let's see how this facilitator handles it.
But while we talk about expectations, can you help Mary and me get to know you a little bit better by telling us your name and something about your association with this group? For instance, you could tell us why you joined the board, how long you've lived in the building. John, can you help us get started with that?
Sure. I'm John Smith. I've lived in the building for 10 years. I ran for the board because my home is in this building, and I want to make sure that it's well maintained. And that's pretty much what I expect from this meeting. A total commitment to the group to see that that driveway gets fixed.
If you're really concerned about maintenance, take a look at the grounds.
If you want to speak now, Nan, can you tell us why you're on the board and what your expectations are? Can we all agree then that we need to focus on determining how the funds from a third assessment from the condo owners would be utilized? Okay, then for this meeting.
So the facilitator would have talked with the president and some of the members of the executive committee already about what their expectations are for the content of the meeting. But they must have also said to the facilitator, we want to make sure that that's what the other board members are expecting as well. If they have other expectations, we're open to it. So the facilitator is guided by what the sponsor of the meeting wants. So if they had said, this is the purpose of the meeting, that would have been announced, whereas this is a little bit looser. So that must have been the agreement going in to the meeting.
Desired outcomes can be the identifying and prioritizing of your most critical needs. Then, if we have some time, we could even begin to formulate a plan for how to use the third assessment funds to address the most important ones.
So you're seeing, I need to go back like 2 seconds here. Let me see if I can do that. Yeah, so you can see what's written up on the flip chart. What the purpose of the meeting is the objectives, the expected outcomes. So that's kind of an outline for the group, but also for us as facilitators of how we're going to move forward in this meeting. And that's formalized, that gets written up. So different from a mediation where we know that the outcome where the expected outcome is an agreement. That's assumed. We don't have to wonder about that. There's no agreement on it. That's assumed coming in. Very different with a facilitation.
We could even begin to formulate a plan for how to use the third assessment funds to address the most important ones.
So this meeting was deciding on what they want to use it for, and what he's saying is there could be a third portion to it, which is actually developing the plan to use those funds.
I'm willing to have an open discussion about the needs, but I expect others to do the same.
Okay, I think everyone has agreed to the purpose and the desired outcomes for this meeting. And Mary's written them down for us. So we'd like to leave that up there, along with the rest of the group memory, so that if we start to get off track, we can always refer back to that.
So everything gets written up on the flip charts, and in person they get put around the room so that everybody can look at what, that's why it's called the group memory, that it's available to the group as to what happened at the meeting.
So at this point, I'd like to use brainstorming to develop a list of Nirvana Gardens needs. Does anyone have an objection to that? Okay, we'll list every suggestion made, and we won't spend any time evaluating or discussing the suggestions. We'll have time to evaluate and prioritize the items after we have our list. Are there any questions about what we're doing? All right, then, who wants to begin?
What I said earlier, the driveway needs to be resurfaced.
We need more money for the grounds around the condo. You know, get rid of all the weeds. Put up some...
Just a second. Remember, we're just creating our list here right now, so we're not spending time at this point evaluating or discussing any single item. So does anyone else have another suggestion for the list?
Security. The security in this building is totally inadequate, and I have a lot of ideas on how I want to improve that if we decide that that's a priority.
Security? What about all the potholes?
Okay, John, we agree that during brainstorming we're not going to take time to evaluate any one item. Now, is the pothole problem captured in this item? Driveway needs resurfacing? Or is that a different problem?
No, that covers it.
Jane, you look like you have something you want to say. Do you have an item for our list?
Yeah, I came to this meeting tonight hoping we could discuss the parking situation.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, my husband and I have different schedules, and we really need 2 parking places.
Well, thank you for your suggestion, Jane. Does anyone have something else they want to add? Okay, we have a list of 10 items here. Let's take a little time right now to discuss each one, and then you'll be able to vote for the 3 that you think are the most important.
So that's a technique that the facilitator has decided on, perhaps with the sponsor, but perhaps just saying, okay, you need to get it down. This is the technique I'd recommend. So brainstorming first, listing of all the ideas, discussion comes next, and then voting. And they're suggesting that each person gets to vote for 3.
Move out of the way. She can see that one. Because I thought of the aisle.
That's good. I think we need barbecue.
While they evaluate the items on their list, we can use the time to highlight some of the useful techniques being utilized by the meeting facilitator and recorder. Did you observe the facilitator in his primary role as a process advocate? He is clear about the content focus of the meeting and continually analyzes the situation and the progress the group is making in achieving its desired outcomes. As a result of this analysis, he has to anticipate where the group needs to move next and make process suggestions concerning how it can get there. Let's go back and see how Ed's use of process suggestions moves things along.
Well, I can see that people came to this meeting with different expectations about what we're here to accomplish.
I did.
So let's just go around the room quickly and share our expectations for the meeting.
Yeah.
And?
So at this point, I'd like to use brainstorming to develop a list of Nirvana Gardens needs. Does anyone have an objection to that?
Here you see the facilitator making sure the group agrees with what he has suggested. After all, it is their meeting, and he is only there to assist them in making sure their work is accomplished. To do this, he must make sure they are all doing the same thing in the same way at the same time.
All right then, we'll list every suggestion made, and we won't spend any time discussing or evaluating any single item at this time. We'll have time later on to evaluate and prioritize these items once we have our list. Are there any questions about what we're about to do?
The facilitator does two other things that help him create a trusting environment. First, he makes sure everyone has a chance to participate.
Jane, you look like you have something you want to say. Do you have an item for our list?
He also defends participants from personal attack.
Security? What about all the potholes?
Okay, John, we agree that during brainstorming we're not going to take time to evaluate any one item.
This facilitator is doing a very good job. He hasn't once fallen into the trap of contributing his own ideas or evaluating the ideas of a group member. Now let's spend some time evaluating the work of the recorder as she creates a visual record of the meeting, the group memory. She positions herself and the group memory where they can be the focus of the group, away from doors and other distractions. She numbers all the sheets so that there will be no confusion concerning the flow of the discussion, especially for the person responsible for transcribing the memory. Taping the sheets up in order also helps the latecomers get oriented immediately about what they have missed. So, just like that, they can get up to speed and begin participating fully in the discussion. She writes quickly and legibly. Her letters are 1.5 inches to 2 inches high, depending on the size of the group. She also varies her pens, using the colors to highlight and divide ideas. And the essence of her role is demonstrated in this clip, where she captures the participants' basic idea using keywords and phrases.
We need more money for the grounds around the condo. You know, get rid of all the weeds. Put up some...
So much for the flashback section of our video. Now it looks like the group is completing their discussion of the list of 10 items. Let's see where they go from here.
Well, that was an excellent discussion of the merits of the 10 items on your list. Did the discussion help you decide which are the 3 most important priorities for you?
Yeah, you bet.
Great. Okay, good. Let's go ahead and prioritize the list. You each vote 3 times, and vote only for those items that you feel are the most important. Well, it looks like this group is really interested in utilizing the third assessment funds to address these 3 needs. The resurfacing of the driveway, working on the grounds, and creating more parking for residents.
Oh, you know, while we were talking, I was just thinking that, well, we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I mean, since we're having so much trouble maintaining the grounds, why don't we just pave that area, you know, next to the trash chutes and create more parking for residents?
If we need more parking spaces, why don't we reallocate some of the guest parking? There's always 3 or 4 of them open.
Okay, we're getting into planning now, and it looks like Jackie and Nan have some valuable ideas, and we don't want to lose them. Mary, maybe you could put those in the storage bin. Donna can explain what that means, or you can check the study guide. Okay, what I'd like to suggest we do at this point now is to break up into small groups and discuss each one of these priorities.
Now, wouldn't it be a shame to spend all this time and effort and not use it to create a plan that works? To assure the group's plan gets implemented, the facilitator cannot let the group get away without committing themselves to follow-through actions on the plan, including completion dates. This all becomes part of the group memory, which is the group's record of what happened in the meeting.
Now, this group has gone above and beyond desired outcomes. Not only have you identified and prioritized a list of critical Nirvana Gardens needs, but you've come a long way in developing action plans for using third assessment funds to address those needs. And in your next meeting, we'll be hearing about your progress in that area. And now, a word from your president.
Well, there's nothing left to say, so this meeting is adjourned.
Successful meeting. So questions, comments?
We do have a question in the chat that we did not get to. Is there a facilitator's checklist for preparing?
So our favorite is the book, Great Meetings, Great Results. Yeah, Bob was. And I think I think you can get it on Amazon. Am I correct on that? You're muted, Belinda.
I think we looked it up, but I'll double check right now.
Okay. And that is the book that we would be using if we're doing a training. But the book itself is just fabulous, so I would highly recommend it to anybody in terms of that checklist.
Yes, the book is on Amazon. The book is on Amazon. The cover looks different, but it's the same book.
Okay. How do you handle recording if you don't have a second person? Actually, the whole issue of recording is really an interesting one. I generally prefer to do my own recording if the group is small enough, because you probably know this from mediation, that what goes up on the flip chart is just so important to the group. The words that you use, what you do put on, what you don't put on, making sure that there's follow through and that there's homework for the next, I mean, all of those things are so important. So if I have a second recorder, I'm going to be either somebody that I've worked with before, or I'm going to be really working with them, hopefully ahead of time, so that they know what I need, or I'm watching them like a hawk and making suggestions and annoying the hell out of them about, write this up, oh, maybe not that. So
yeah, I think that once, if you're facilitating a meeting and you have to record it, it seems maybe a little daunting when we think about it. But for me, at least, when I'm doing the negotiations ones, I'm getting a lot of information as I record ideas and things like that, in ways in which I might be able to help them come up with another one or something like that. So it provides a little bit of reflection time for you as you're recording something too.
We have another comment, a question in the chat asking that you talk a bit about how to count the votes for prioritizing, just straight up numbers.
So in the book that we were talking about, there are a number of different techniques for making decisions. I would say not just counting votes, but for making decisions. And the one that you saw is, I think, the simplest one, which is you give people the number of votes for about a third of the number of ideas, and then come up with how many votes each one gets. But there are many more complicated ones, and some of them require a level of arithmetic that's beyond me. But I don't know, Bob, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was imagining that meeting being, you know, a much larger group and trying to organize that, and that's where you might break off and have small groups. We're going to come back with their top three. I've had different negotiating teams come back with a proposal that would have been written by the other team. I mean, there are just a lot of techniques, and it really depends a lot on the situation and what you want out of it, because, you know, there's weighted voting. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways of doing it. And in this situation, I don't think he was really thinking that they would get to the point of doing that. And so I think he did a good job of saying, all right, well, let's talk about this and see if we can identify it. But sometimes it's just purely voting, but other times it's through some discussion method. There's other weighted voting. There's just a lot of different ways of doing it. It's covered well in the book, but
there's a whole chapter, yeah, on it. Yeah, yeah. And one of the questions about can you spend all your votes on one item always comes up when you're asking people to do three votes. That's one of the questions that you can anticipate. And as a facilitator, you want to come in with the answer to that. So you would want to talk to the sponsors of the group about which do they care one way or another, what's important to them, and then that would be the rule that the group would go by. So any other, should we go back and start talking about either differences, go back again and talk about differences with mediation? Would that be a good place to go? What do you all think? What are the differences?
I think perhaps the most obvious one is that there's not an apparent third party overlooking or ordering the mediation as we have when there's court orders. The presence of a court and the impact of if its impact on the session, it can't be ignored when you're trying to mediate the differences.
Although I think the IEPs have a sort of similar mandate for meeting and what has to go into the meeting. So that's a little bit similar.
You should try using flip charts with a zooming process in mediation.
Actually, we do. We do share screen with Word documents or with a whiteboard.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like the whiteboard. I like the whiteboards because those continue to be available to people. People individually can go back and forth and look to see what was on the previous or whiteboard or the current one. So it's a nice thing to have. Bob, you were going to add to that?
No, I was just going to say that I've done, lots of negotiations on Zoom where I was recording on a board and it was all going up in front of them, and it gets a little crowded sometimes, but it works. It works fine.
Yeah, there are other techniques on Zoom also in terms of using a common Google Doc or Google Drives, again, that people individually have access to. So it's not always just looking on the screen, but they can look at it off screen. Some of them, everyone can make changes. So there are actually a lot of facilitation techniques on Zoom as well. Any other differences or similarities with mediation that anybody noticed?
And we also have a question in the chat. Do you ever use Zoom's built-in whiteboard?
Yes, that's the one I was mentioning, that there are a number of different whiteboards so people can go back and forth and experience those. Yeah, and I can actually bring it up, I think. New whiteboard. So can you all see that? See the whiteboard? And you should all be able to write on it. So if I go to the T and I can start here, this is how I can make a list is 1, 2, 3. So you can make lists there. People can add to it, or that's great. And then you can go down and start a new page. You can add a page. And so then you're starting over, but people can go back and look at the previous page. So the T is to type on it, but then there's that pen so you can draw. So there's lots of little sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to point out to folks that make sure you're noticing that we're all participating in Zena's whiteboard.
That's a nice touch. So Muffy is saying maybe a difference is in mediation, you do more reflect and reframe, and facilitation more exactly what they say. Oh, no, there's a lot of reflection and reframing in facilitation, really a lot. And narration of what they're doing, helping the group recognize where they are and what they're doing. So I would say the same thing, except more so. I don't know. Belinda and Bob, would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like
Absolutely.
I reframe. It's the story of my life, reframing.
It's a fabulous skill, yeah. And Phil, the
well,
question.
I mean, you saw how that really that really helps. So what was his name, John Smith or something, who was so fixated on the,
Potholes.
the potholes. He had to sort of reframe that, reframing the weeds and things like that, to try to get that into a different, to get, you got to get these. I mean, every time when you get called to facilitate a meeting, people aren't generally, unless they're really enlightened, aren't calling you because their meetings are going so well.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to be somewhat prepared for behavior that you may have to help reassess or, reframe or redirect. That's where I think that, a discussion of process and the sort of, like ground rules and things like that are important ahead of time as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I was just in the beginning. They said write down in the group memory, no paraphrasing, no interpretation. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's all. That's why I said that, because they stated that in the beginning.
Oh yeah, no, there is definitely reframing. I wouldn't agree just writing it down the way people say it. Yeah, just like mediation. But Muffy, one of the things that you were bringing up before is, how do you get a group to accept you as a facilitator? And so I think one of the questions is, who invited you? And does the rest of the group want you? And is it the same people at the group each time, or is it different? Who is it that's hijacking it? That is, who's taking over? And if that happens continually, can you be in touch with that person too, to think about what roles they want? It reminds me of being asked to facilitate a meeting that's being run by a manager or supervisor. And they ask me to come in, and we've talked about what it is that they want me to do, but they really run the meeting and they don't know how to let go. And so part of the art, I think, of facilitation is trying to get a sense of, can you be helpful in the midst of that, and in what way? So with some managers, what I'll do is at a break go and say, it seems like it's running well. I'm not sure you need me to facilitate much. This is what I've been doing. Is that acceptable? In other meetings, it'll crash and burn because of the way that they're leading it, the way they've always led it. That's why they asked me to come in, but they're not letting me do it. So then I might say at a break, I'm wondering if you might try this, this, or this. So doing more coaching. Or maybe I could run this part and you could run that part. I mean, just trying to see, are there ways to get in? But there are certainly groups where the leader, even though they asked for a facilitator, is never going to let the facilitator facilitate. But I think that if that's happening with a lot of people, I think that would be worth a separate discussion.
There's also a question in the chat I don't want to miss. It's the question about the influence of the court when mediation is ordered is always interesting. How often is facilitation court ordered? How do folks deal with mediation that is court ordered? Is it the issue of voluntariness?
Oh yeah.
Voluntariness?
So I actually wanted to comment on the use of the term facilitation for mediation that I think Barbara Johannesson was referring to, and that's an old Michigan term where mediation was really evaluative mediation, and facilitation was facilitative mediation. And so a lot of old timers will still use the term facilitation, whereas we would call it just plain mediation. But facilitation, I don't think is ever, facilitation per se, I don't think is ever court ordered.
No, I would say that in our area of service, Washtenaw and Livingston counties, we've never received a court order for a group facilitation as we're defining it now. Right. The court orders are specific to mediation, and for Washtenaw County now, peacemaking and restorative circles. But it's always that, tension. People are ordered to the process, and then what do they do when they get there? I think we're lucky that the participants for our cases always participate. They sign that same consent form, and they always participate. So some other centers in the state have shared that folks show up to be in compliance with the order, then they don't say anything. They don't engage or participate in the process. I feel that we're pretty fortunate that we don't, at least it's not been shared with me by the volunteers, that people are resisting the process and not saying anything. And Phil, your hand is up.
Well, and you just kind of covered what I was thinking, Belinda. Thank you. Frequently, mediation is court ordered. Small claims, for example, domestic relations issues are another example, commercial law even. But as a mediator, I think we're obligated to inform people that you're here, you're ordered to be here. And if you consent, even if you consent to participate, you can always get up and leave, and there's no penalty associated with doing that. The mediator's report to the court, the status report, doesn't include the fact that you left in a huff or started to participate and then left. It only says that the matter resolved or it didn't resolve. And if it resolves, then typically I include a copy of the mediation agreement with my status report, and that's the end of it. But I hate for people to have the feeling that because they're here, because they were ordered to be, that they must resolve their difficulty. That's really not, at least for me, philosophically not consistent.
I think our practices are similar across centers in that respect, and our standards of conduct definitely lays out how we are to conduct the mediation. We have about 5 minutes of time left, and there was an ending question. Bob, I'm going to suggest that we go there if you want.
Yep, that's fine. So this has been great, and the questions have been really wonderful, and I hope that you have a good sense for the difference between the two, mediation and facilitation. But with the idea of developing a training that you may want to participate in or advise others to participate in, or so that we'll advertise, what do you think would be some important takeaways from a training? 1 day, 2 day, whatever it is. What do you think are some important takeaways? And I guess we could gather this in a couple of ways because we only have a few more minutes. So Belinda, how are you suggesting that we collect this information in case people want to reflect and send it to us?
Yes, so I'm taking notes in a Google Doc for us, and people can shout it out or they can put it in the chat, and I'll make sure I cut and paste them into our document. And just as a reminder for those who were here last month, we are planning a full day, 1 day or 2 day trainings, and now we're holding dates in October where Bob and Zena and I will be working together to execute a training on this topic that's going to cover, I think, all of your questions. The book will be part of that training. Great Meetings for Great Results will be a part of that training. But we'll really get into some skill building around how to facilitate a large group discussion with the nuances of how decisions are made, how to do that pre-work and all of that. So if there's something specific that you want us to address, this is a good time to let us know. And if it comes to you later, just send me an email. I think all of you know how to email me at the DRC.
I just shared my email address with everyone in case
Thank you
have a question or you want to send it to me. I'm happy to do that and happy to talk to you offline about this if you like.
Yeah.
The ideas, though, quickly before we leave.
Okay. Okay, well, if the ideas come to you later, don't hesitate to send emails out to us. We will be working on an agenda fairly soon of what that will look like. We would like for some DRC volunteers to be a part of that. We are getting some requests for large group meetings, and a very small group of us have been, which includes me most of the time, we've been working through this, which pushed me to say we need to learn how to do this collectively, because I can't, spend that much time on casework. So these requests are coming in, which means that something in our community is shifting, where organizations, not court-related stuff, by the way, but organizations are saying, I need help, I need support in how to run this meeting, to get at a resource decision, or to build a cohesive group that is aligned with the mission of the organization. So it can be a number of different reasons why we get that call, but we're getting those requests, and we don't, you all know we don't want to turn people away. We want to find a way to serve them. So I'm asking all of you and others who were here last month to consider taking the training and support this work with the DRC, and we'll go from there and see if that's another niche in our community that we can serve.
And Muffy is making the point, you've got a couple of people who are already trained, and so you should make a list.
Yeah, we have so many lists, Muffy. So for those who know how to do this from the past, it's been a number of years. So I am concerned about the length of time that has passed. But for those who took this training before, I welcome them just to refresh me, remind me. It's just that, I need a reminder. I'm just at that phase of life. I can't remember a lot of stuff. But just let me know. If you want to be involved with this, you can just send me an email. We are igniting that list so we can have a pool of resources for us. And for those who are curious or interested and want to come to the training, we welcome that. You can just send me an email so we won't forget about you, but an announcement of that training will go out once we have solidified the actual date and the number of hours and all of that stuff.
Do you remember the dates that we're looking at now? I can't remember.
We're looking at October 17th or 18th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just if people are interested. And I think the other thing that I would just say is that there are large group mediations that use facilitation techniques as well. And I was thinking, Novia, of the elder mediations that we do, where it's kind of a hybrid between mediation techniques and facilitation techniques. And so it'd be interesting to explore that. It might be fun to have some different small groups to talk about, like the IDP group or the elder mediation groups, just to talk about that crossover between mediation and facilitation.
Okay. That sounds interesting too. So again, I want to thank Bob and Zena for just saying yes. Nobody, they just said, yes, I'll do it. So I'm happy about that. Thank you all for coming. And more to come on this topic as we progress through the summer and get an announcement out on our website. And I hope to see some of you there at the full day training.